Welcome back, Wanderers. It's Naidra. It's no secret that PoE 2 is a very complex game and a little bit difficult to figure out. There's so many different mechanics involved with it that it makes it a little bit overwhelming, especially if you've never played PoE or PoE 2 before. And so today I'm going to show you guys a couple of tips and tricks that you should know right off the bat to ensure that you have a good playing experience and also something that's going to help you progress through the game a little bit quicker. So let's go ahead and dive right in. One of the first things that you need to know is you have the ability to salvage items and you also have the ability to disenchant items. And both of those seem like they're pretty straightforward. However, keep in mind that you can't salvage everything and you also cannot disenchant everything. So it makes it a little bit confusing. So first off, let's start off with the salvaging bench. The salvaging bench will allow you to salvage items that either have something that says quality on it. So for example, this focus up here, you can see at the top says quality plus 3%. This is an item that I would be able to salvage. Or the other thing that I can salvage is items that have sockets on it. By salvaging these items individually, you're going to get shards or blacksmith whetstones, which will allow you to stack those items and to create either orbs or other items that'll allow you to power up your gear. And I'll show you exactly what those are in just a few moments here. So those are the only two things that you can salvage at this time. If it does not have quality on it or if it does not have a socket in it, then you can either likely disenchant the item, or if you can't do either of those two, then you would want to sell them. Now, one quick way to know if an item has quality or if it has a socket on it is when you're going through and items are dropping, you can hover over the item with your cursor and it'll pull it up on the bottom right hand of your screen and it'll show you either quality or it'll show you the sockets. Now, the sockets are a little bit easier to identify because the sockets will have a star next to the item, indicating that it's got a socket. If it's got 2 stars on it, that means that it's got 2 sockets on it. So it makes it pretty easy to see even without picking up the item. But items that have quality can be basic items. So the ones that are white, it can be a blue item, it could be a yellow item. Any of the items can have quality on it, but you want to make sure you pick it up. And like I said, you go ahead and salvage that if it's not an item that you're going to use. And so I'll show you what you can get from those in the stash in just a moment here. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can also disenchant an item. And similarly to salvaging, when you disenchant an item, it'll break down the item and it'll give you a specific item, which actually will be shown before you accept the disenchantment. And so for this item, because this is a yellow item, I am able to disenchant this. And this is going to give me a total of 2 regal shards as indicated up on the top left. So we'll go ahead and accept that. And then we'll have those additional regal shards that we didn't have before. Once this stack reaches 10, then it'll turn into a regal orb, which once again, we'll take a look and see what that means in just a moment here. But not all items can be disenchanted. So for example, this is just a plain white silver charm. If I were to try to disenchant this, it's not going to let me place it in here. White items cannot be disenchanted. This is only going to be available for blue, yellow, or orange items as well. But it basically breaks the item down into a form of currency that you can use to upgrade your equipment either at that time or at a later time as well. But it is really handy to start salvaging and to start disenchanting your items right off the bat when you start playing the game, so that you can have these different items to be able to power up a little bit before you're reaching those end of act bosses. If you don't do that, you may find yourself struggling or you may find yourself dying a lot from monsters. It's because you haven't powered up your character enough. So let's go ahead and take a look at those different shards and also orbs that will help you power up your character. So first and foremost, we've got our shards down here at the bottom. And by the way, if you don't have this stash tab, you can purchase this from the microtransaction store. You should already have 300 coins that you can utilize towards this, and it doesn't cost that much to buy this, but it is extremely helpful because it helps me to keep all of my stuff organized in one place. Once I got a proper stack of these shards, it'll automatically turn into an orb, or it may turn into a whetstone or any of these other things here. Like I mentioned, each one of these shards can stack up to 10 times. Once you have a stack of 10, it'll automatically turn into either one of these orbs, or it'll turn into the etcher, scrap, or whetstone, depending on what it is that you're salvaging or depending on what kind of shards you're picking up. And so with that, let's take a look at these individual orbs together. So the first one that we have listed here is going to be the Orb of Transmutation. And this is one of the easiest ones to get in the game, and this will start dropping pretty much right off the bat in Act 1. So the Orb of Transmutation is an item that allows us to upgrade a normal item to a magic item with one modifier. So what that means is if I have an item that's currently white, like the Silver Charm down here, I can right click on the Orb of Transmutation, and as you can see, that white item automatically will have a box around it, indicating that I am able to use this Orb of Transmutation on it, and it'll allow me to make this a magic item. So let's just go ahead and do that for the purpose of demonstration. So now my Silver Charm has changed from a white item to Silver Charm of the constant, and now it's highlighted in blue. And as you can see, it's also added an additional modifier down at the bottom. So that helps your white items become a little bit more powerful, and you can find white items just about anywhere, but you can also purchase those white items from vendors, or you can purchase them in the shop as well. And then you can upgrade those yourself instead of having to go around looking for blue items or looking for yellow items. If you want, you have the ability to just create it yourself. However, be mindful that some items are going to be more powerful and will have the ability to give you better modifiers the higher the level of the requirement. This item has a level requirement of 10, but I can get a more powerful version of this later on, and then I can do the same thing where I can use this Orb of Transmutation to turn it into a magic item with one modifier, and then that perfectly segues us into the next step, which would be the Orb of Augmentation. Now, the Orb of Augmentation, similar to the Orb of Transmutation, augments a magic item with a new random modifier. So now that we've made this a magic item, and I know I'm completely wasting this right now, but just for the purpose of demonstration, we would right click this, and then once again, we've got that box around our Silver Charm. So if we click on it, and this will add a new random magic modifier to this item, giving us an additional one for the third modifier for this specific item. So that's how the Orb of Transmutation and the Orb of Augmentation work. These are, again, the more basic ones and the easier ones to get in the open world. But like I mentioned, these are things that you are probably going to be using pretty frequently. So make sure that you're salvaging and you're disenchanting your items as you're progressing through your storyline. Next up, we've got the Orb of Alchemy. Now, a little bit different. This one is quite a bit more difficult to find. In fact, this is probably only my third or fourth one that I've ever gotten so far. And this allows you to upgrade a normal white item to a rare yellow item with 4 modifiers on it. So talk about a big power boost. If you don't have any yellow items, or again, if you're just starting off the game, this will give you a serious power boost by adding 4 modifiers to a rare item. And the modifiers will be random, but if you don't currently have any, it will more than likely be more helpful than just having a white item in your equipment. So Orb of Alchemy, this is a lot more rare, but also extremely helpful. And I would highly recommend saving these for a time when you really need it. But if you are struggling against those bosses again, this will give you that nice power boost that you need to progress. Next up, we've got the Regal Orb. This one's not quite as rare as the Orb of Alchemy, but this one will upgrade a magic item, so a blue item, to a rare item, and it will also add one additional modifier. And so I'm not going to use this, but if I wanted to, similar idea, I can right click on this item, and then this will allow me to change a blue item. So for example, I've got this staff up here that's got 2 modifiers on it currently. If I click on this, this will make this a rare yellow item, and then it will add a third modifier to it, but that modifier will be random. Now, if I ended up doing that, and let's say that the modifier that I ended up getting I did not like or was not useful for me, the next thing that we can do is we can use this Chaos Orb, which will remove a random modifier on your item and then add a new random modifier to it. So again, this is a little bit gambling, but you are able to then replace one of the modifiers that's on here. For example, if I wanted to replace one of the modifiers that's on my focus right now, it is random. But if I were to use that, my hope, because I'm not using any chaos damage right now, is that it would remove the chaos damage and then it would add something that's a little bit more useful for my build. The frustrating part is it is random, so it may not necessarily do that one. I would have a 1 in 5 chance of getting that one replaced, but nonetheless, it is something that could potentially give you a little power boost as well. And then lastly, for the orbs, we've got the Exalted Orb. I have not yet been able to get the other orbs. So for now, the Exalted Orb will augment a rare item with the new random modifier. So this will allow me to add a new modifier to any of my yellow items that I have. And once again, as you can see, there's a box that will then highlight that specific item, which is eligible to gain a new modifier. So if I wanted to add a fourth modifier to my wand, I can go ahead and do that. And it's going to give me something random. Hopefully we would get something useful, but again, you can't know until you give it a try. So that's what some of these different orbs do. Very useful. And like I said, this is a huge power boost, especially in the beginning of the game while you are struggling and while you're still trying to figure everything out. But instead of wasting time like I did, make sure you're collecting these from the very beginning. That way you can use them when you need to and help you progress in the game a lot faster. And then next up, we've got a few different items on the left-hand side here. So all of these items are going to improve the quality of either your weapon or your armor. And so, like I mentioned earlier, you can take quality items to the salvage bench and you can salvage them to get some kind of shards that will then in turn allow you to create these different etchers, scraps, whetstones, whatever it may be, in order to help you improve the quality of the existing equipment you're using. So if I wanted to, for example, this Arcanist etcher here improves the quality of a staff, wand, or scepter. Now I could right click on this item and then I can improve the quality of my wand and also my staff, but you can only improve the quality of that specific item up to 20%. And so right now I have my focus has plus 3% to quality. I would only be able to add an additional 17% quality to this before it's maxed out. And then same thing with the armorer's scrap or the blacksmith's whetstone. This will allow you to improve the quality of an armor, whereas the whetstone is going to allow you to improve the quality of a martial weapon. I don't use a martial weapon on this build, so that's not going to be helpful for me. But if you're using something like a quarterstaff, this may be something that can help you out and help you gain a little bit more power. And then on the right hand side here, these are pretty rare in the beginning of the game, and I've only gotten, this is actually only my second jeweler's orb that I've received so far. And what this does is it adds an additional support gem socket to a skill that currently has 2 support gem sockets. So let me show you what that means. So in order to use this, I do need to open up my skill panel, and then I would right click on the jeweler's orb, and then I would just select the specific skill that I'd like to add an additional socket to. So like I mentioned, this is my second one that I received, and currently I'm level 32 in an Act 2, towards the end of Act 2. And I was able to add an additional socket to my frostbolt. You can have up to 5 total sockets on each individual skill, but this is going to significantly help boost the power of your skills by adding additional sockets to it as well. So if I wanted to use it, let's say on my frost bomb, I would just click on the skill and then I'd be able to add an additional support gem to this. And if you're not aware yet, these support gems, like I mentioned, are extremely helpful and will help make your build that much more powerful. For example, right now I am using Scattershot, which allows me to basically fire off 2 additional projectiles. So when I'm using my frost bolt, I'm firing off 3 at a time, making it a lot easier for me to go through crowds of enemies and making me that much more powerful. So these are important to have. These are pretty rare at this point of the game. There's 3 different qualities you can receive for these Jeweler's Orb. So the Lesser Jeweler's Orb will allow you to add a support gem socket to a skill gem with 2 support gem sockets currently in it. So if I've currently got a skill that's got 2 sockets, I can add a third one by utilizing this Jeweler's Orb. Whereas the next level up will allow me to add a gem socket to a skill with 3 current support gem sockets, allowing me to get the 4th one. And then finally, the best quality one will allow me to add an additional support gem socket to an item that's currently already got 4, meaning I can have up to a total of 5 support gem sockets on each individual skill. And then lastly, at the bottom of my stash here, I am keeping my runes. I do want to point out that if you do have runes and if you've never used these before, just be aware that once you put a rune inside of a piece of armor or a piece of equipment, that rune can never be removed at that point. So if you've already put it in there, that's what you're getting. You're not going to be able to change it out for another one. So if you don't know if that's the right one to use, or if you're just not sure at this point, my recommendation is hold off on that until you are sure, because that, like I mentioned, is not removable. And then the next thing I wanted to show you guys really quick is you also will get support gems and you'll also get spirit gems as you progress through the game. Each one of these has a different level of its own. For example, for the support gems right now, I only have level 1. You can also get spirit and skill gems, which will allow you to upgrade your stuff. And so what I mean by that is if I wanted to upgrade a skill or if I wanted to get a new skill, I can use these skill gems to add an additional skill. Keep in mind the passive skill tree is only exactly that. It's only going to upgrade your passives. So you'll be able to get things like additional attributes. You'll be able to get maybe additional attack speed or attack power of things of that nature. But the skill tree isn't what's going to give you your actual skills. If you wanted to add a new skill to your character, you would need to use an uncut skill gem in order to do that. And so I want to demonstrate really quickly what these 3 different items that we have in here do. First up, we've got the uncut support gem. So if we right click on the uncut support gem, it'll take you to the support skills panel. And typically it'll take you to your existing skills, and then you'll be able to select from the different support skills you can choose from for that specific skill. Now that's great, but what you should know is you're not limited to only using these specific support skills. You also can actually select from pretty much any of the support skills that are available in the game for basically every character. And so with that, you can actually go to all gems and then you can select from different support skills that you can use for any of the skills that you have existing. But keeping in mind that some of these will not work with all of the skills. For example, if I wanted to use Heightened Curse and I'm not using a curse skill, A, will likely not be able to go into that socket, and B, even if it did, it would not be helpful because you're not currently using a curse. And so I know there's a whole bunch of different support skills you can use, but be mindful of which one you're selecting. And also, like I said, keep in mind that you can pick and choose from different options from different characters that may be helpful for your build as well. So if I wanted to use, for example, precision, I could click on this, I can engrave it, and then I can add this additional skill or support skill to one of my existing skills. So the point with all of that being is you are not limited to only the ones that are currently showing up under your specific skills. You can browse through the additional options that you have under all gems and see if that's something that would work for your character as well. Now, there isn't very much risk in doing this, and that's because you do get quite a bit of uncut support gems as you progress through the game. So instead of just leaving them on the ground or getting rid of these, make sure you pick those up. And even if you don't necessarily need to use that additional support skill, you can always toss those in your stash as well and use those at a later time. Now, when you hover over these individual support skills, it'll tell you exactly which skills that you currently have can be supported by this. So that's a quick little tidbit on how the uncut skill gems work and also on how the passives work as well. Like I said, don't limit yourself to just the ones that you're seeing for your existing skill. You can browse through the different ones that are available for you to purchase, and then you can implement the one that's going to work best for your build. The next thing we're going to look at is the uncut spirit gems. And so the difference between a skill gem and is the spirit gem will also allow you to upgrade a persistent buff. And so specifically for me, I currently have Arctic armor on. This is considered a buff skill, so I can upgrade this. And by doing so, it's going to increase the damage that's being dealt when enemies are hitting me with melee attacks. And it also lowers the amount of time it takes for my Arctic armor to gain a stage. So this is really, really helpful. But like I mentioned, that is only available by utilizing the persistent buff skill or the uncut spirit gem. And then lastly, for our gems, we have the uncut skill gems. I think this one you're probably going to be the most familiar with, but by right clicking on the skill gems, I can then either A, power up an existing skill that I have. So if I wanted to power up my Ice Nova from level 3, I can take it all the way up to level 6 by using a level 6 skill gem. Or I can take a different skill. If I want to try out a different build, I can maybe pick up Spark, or I might be able to pick up Incinerate, depending on what you want to do. But I think that one's pretty straightforward. These skill gems are where your skills are coming from. All right, and then the next thing I wanted to show you guys really quick, and I'm sure you guys are all already aware of this, but just in case you're not, these wisdom scrolls allow you to identify an item, and these are especially useful while you're out in the open world and you don't want to go back to town if you just want to quickly take a look and see what you've got. However, if you don't want to use a scroll of wisdom on every item that's unidentified, you can always come back to town and talk to this hooded one, and they will identify your items for free. So this is going to be really helpful and also make it a little bit bit quicker so that you're not having to identify each one of those individually. The next thing that I wanted to show you guys as well is at the same place, you have the ability to refund your passives. So that means you can refund your passive skill tree if you do, or if you wanted to completely change up your build, just keeping in mind that every one of these that you refund is going to cost gold. So for me specifically at this point of the game, if I wanted to remove each one of these, it's going to be 517 gold to remove these going all the way down. So that would probably take almost all of my gold away if I wanted to reset it from the very beginning, but it is something that you can do if you messed up with your skill tree or if you wanted to kind of redo that as well. So that's all I've got for the skill gems. I've got one more thing that I wanted to show you guys really quick, which may help you progress a little bit quicker through the beginning stages of the game as well. And this is the different bosses that are available for you to fight, which may end up giving you additional skill points. Maybe they'll give you some additional resistance, but there's something to be gained by some of the bosses that you can fight. So if you see these skulls on your map, and if they're not grayed out, so if they're white, kind of like this guy is here, you would want to make sure that you go and take that boss down, as some of these guys, like I mentioned, will give you some very valuable buffs that will help power you up as you continue to progress. And a good example that we have here is by defeating the Constrictor Queen, she's going to give us an additional 2 weapon set passive skill points that we can use towards our skill tree. And the same thing goes for Act 1. We've got a couple of those. For example, we've got the Crowbell, which gives us 2 additional passive skills. And then we've also got Bira of the Rotten Pack, which gives us an additional 10% to our cold resistance. So anytime you see a plus or some kind of a symbol next to the skull, that means there's something to be gained by completing this portion or by completing this battle. So never skip on those. Make sure you guys are picking those up as you continue to progress. As like I mentioned, this is going to give you a pretty big power boost and make you feel good about the stage that you're at. If at any point you're getting to a place where you're just getting your ass handed to you and you absolutely can't progress, that's when I would go back and take a look and make sure you've upgraded your items, upgraded your skills, and beat all of those bosses that have that additional plus on the side. I think that's going to be super useful. So that's all I have for you guys for today. I hope these tips and tricks were helpful for you. I hope this helps you guys progress into the game a lot faster. And I also hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Wanderers.